Welcome to Let's Rewatch It Again. I'm Jordan, and I made a choice. I would let the fear in, let it take over, let it do its thing, but only for 5 seconds. That's all I was going to give it. Today, we are rewatching the pilot episode of Lost, but only part 1 because that's how it originally aired on TV. I know, that's super cruel, and also I feel like it loses a little something if you're only watching part 1, but we're going to focus on just part 1 today because I have a lot to say about the pilot. I truly believe this is one of the best pilots on television. It's in my top 10, that's for sure. It does an incredible job of storytelling, bringing you into it, tons of mystery, intrigue, humor, heartbreaking, heartfelt moments, everything, and every single character that you need to know about for the very first season is introduced in the first part 1 and part 2. You see everybody in part 1, but we don't talk to everybody until the end of part 2. But that's okay. If you've never seen Lost before, don't worry. Like I said, this is the pilot episode. You don't have to know anything going into it, but we are going to talk about a few fun things before we hit our opening scene. Lost is a sci-fi drama with a little bit of supernatural elements, which turns into a lot of supernatural elements over the seasons. And it was actually inspired by the movie Castaway, which I also really love. Hello, Tom Hanks. This show is told in a serialized manner with a massive main cast. I would consider this to be about 12 main characters, which fluctuates over time as we move in and out of people's stories. I don't want to blast you with any spoilers. The show was created by J.J. Abrams and Damon Lindelof and aired on ABC for 6 seasons. The series finale was one of the most watched at the time and was highly regarded as upsetting. Honestly, some people hate it, myself included. I felt largely disappointed at the time and also super confused. It's one of those that instantly you have to go on YouTube and be like, someone explain this to me. Is that really what I just saw? But again, let's just focus in on the pilot. Due to its large ensemble cast and the cost of filming primarily in Oahu, Hawaii, the series is one of the most expensive on television, with the pilot alone costing $14 million, which is insane because that is how much it cost to make the first Home Alone movie. I know. Tune in for that next Christmas. Our pilot begins in the aftermath of a plane crash, leaving surviving passengers of Oceanic 815 on what seems to be an uninhabited tropical island. And that little synopsis honestly feels a little spoilery, I have to say. I almost wish that this had been one of those things where they don't tell you anything at all, except they just say like Lost, created by so-and-so and so-and-so, inspired by Castaway. And then they just show the island, like the beach scene with like screaming in the background. Like that would, oh man, if I had created this trailer. Now, I went ahead and watched this episode with the commentary led by Damon and JJ and another man, Brian Burke. Their voices are all super similar. It's kind of like when you listen to a podcast for the first time and all the people on it sound so the same that you're like, is that Sierra? Jerry? What? Who's who? I took notes along the way, so we're going to pepper those in as we go along, but I'm ready to hit play. All right, I am a sucker for opening on an eye, specifically the way that Jack's eyes just pop open and his pupils dilate. It's so incredibly good. We do this a couple more times over the series. It's a little gimmicky, but I never cease to love it. It pulls me in every single time. We're also looking straight up at the trees, like as if you are laying down with Jack, looking up at this giant forest. And it's like, where are we? What is going on? And of course, Michael Giacchino. I don't know. So, and of course, our score is instantly iconic. The way that Michael Giacchino like puts something into a story with music is completely unreal and just so specific to his style. Now, all we've got here is a man in a suit laying in the jungle amidst bamboo. He's got a scratch on his face, and then all of a sudden there's a dog. Vincent, we learn later, is played by a girl dog named Madison. And as Jack begins to stand up, we see that he's either really hurt or exhausted. And then he pulls a bottle of alcohol out of his pocket, like a little tiny one that you get on airplanes. And it's almost like, is he exhausted because he's hungover? Like, what is going on? Again, if you didn't know anything coming into this, we're getting all these tiny little clues that don't add up whatsoever. Then all of a sudden he just starts racing through the bamboo and he goes past a single shoe that is like placed against a tree branch, which is super weird. It's pristine, clean white and almost looks like, in my mind, a child's shoe or maybe like a small woman. And it's like, where are we right now? What is happening? And there is a rule of shoe. Now, I've heard this a bunch of times. I looked it up to try to figure out where is the origin of this. But basically, if you see one shoe, that person is half dead. If you see both shoes are completely off, that person is completely dead. I don't know why. It's a thing in disasters. It's something I've heard for many, many years. I only found the Urban Dictionary meaning of it, so who can say? Our man in a suit, his name is Jack, which we don't learn for several minutes, but just to make things as least confusing as possible, we're gonna say Jack. Jack breaks through the thick green foliage to find a peaceful beach with rolling waves, and it looks so peaceful and beautiful, and yet there's screaming in the background. There's like a female scream, there's someone calling out for help, and we hear like this whirring of like a jet engine. I mean, it's so terrifying. I don't want to go to this beach. Jack sort of jogs through the mess and the camera whirls around him as people scream and the jet engine is getting louder. And it's so overwhelming that at one point he actually holds his hands up towards his head and he's like kind of squinting and cringing. And his tie is like whipping around his body. And then we hear someone, a man's voice in the close distance yelling out for help, but we don't see him. It's just like some unknown person. The chaos of this scene is so well done that I can't look away from it as I'm watching. And every time I rewatch it, I'm pulled right back into it as if it's the first time that I'm witnessing it, except that I know who the characters are now. That's it. I mean, every single time it's more and more chaotic. It feels like I'm there and it's my worst nightmare realized. As the camera is whirling around and Jack is beginning to move around the wreckage, we get a glimpse of a few characters. Michael is calling out for Walt. Shannon is just standing in the middle of everything, screaming at the top of her lungs, just at the sky. Charlie is wandering around, and then we actually see Jin yelling in what we will soon learn is Korean. Then Jack looks up and sees part of the plane is like trembling up above him, and it's, oh man, this pan upward, it feels so massive. The perspective of our camera showing us these wide upward shots is so otherworldly. It almost feels like we're on another planet because everything feels so unbelievably big. And you really forget how big planes are because in my mind, I'm like, oh, a plane, it's got 3 seats and 3 seats. But a plane traveling more than 10 hours is most likely, or even more than 6 hours, a lot of times, is going to have 3 seats, 5 seats, 3 seats. Now, sometimes in the middle, it's just 4, but that is a lot of people. Like, whoa. My dad has actually been on a plane where there were 2 stories, 2 levels. What? Like, I can't imagine how many people were on this plane and are now just littering the beach in different unaliveness. Finally, we see the man calling out for help. He's trapped underneath a metal leg of a plane wheel. My God, everything is so big. It makes you feel even smaller and more afraid. That's all I have to say about that. Jack immediately starts to point at people and say, you help me here, you help me here. And with that little bit of dialogue, we see the full character realm of who Jack is at his core. He's not only a hero, but he's a leader. And he cannot help but do both of those things at every second of every day. And it's not only his greatest strength, but his greatest weakness. And it's so incredible to see because right now we're only seeing it as a strength. They pull the guy out and Jack actually uses his tie as a tourniquet, another clue as to who he might be in real life. And then another female voice calls out and we see a pregnant woman on all fours. It's Claire and it looks like she might be in labor. This can't be good. Jack runs through the wreckage. Again, he's running through all of this like a giant action movie. But if this was real life, it doesn't feel like an action movie. It literally just feels like terror upon terror upon terror. Then we see another main character, Locke, yelling at someone to get away from the plane engine because it's this giant round engine where the inside is still whirring. And the sound of it is so high pitched and loud, I can't imagine standing next to it. And the man is unfortunately sucked in, even though Locke told him to get out of the way. And dear God, the entire thing explodes so big that Jack covers Claire with his entire body to protect her, and like several other people are killed in the process. As Jack is trying to calm Claire, we see Boone, another character, trying to give CPR to Rose, and I'm sorry, but he's doing it wrong. Jack instructs another man, Hurley, thank goodness, Hurley is finally here, and tells him to stay with Claire and to call out to him when her contractions get less than 3 minutes apart. That's really close together. He is basically requiring Hurley to stay with Claire throughout her entire labor. And what we can only assume is that to be there for the birth. If only he knew that Hurley was so not a good idea for that. Hurley finally asks the question that we've all been dying to ask as you've watched this entire sequence. What's your name? And then we get this really cool shot of Jack with this tiniest of hesitations before he yells out, Jack! I really love seeing someone kind of pause and take themselves in of like, oh, right. Okay, side note, they were going to kill off Jack at the end of part 1. Are you kidding me? Every time I learn that, I'm like, what were you thinking? The hero at the beginning, why would you kill them off? I mean, we're creating this incredible character just so like, right before the pilot even truly ends. It makes no sense to me. I don't understand why it was written that way at the beginning. And then they just decide, you know what? Actually, I think we need him, which is good because I truly believe that this show would not have lasted 6 seasons or even 3 without Jack. I'm sorry. As much as he bugs me, we need him. All right. Jack leaves Hurley with Claire and tells Boone he's just blowing air into Rose's stomach, which is true. You have to tilt the person's head back really far to open the airway. And Boone insists that he knows what he's doing because he's a lifeguard. Okay, I can definitely tell you as someone who has done CPR training several times over and over again, you're going to do it wrong at some point. You're going to panic. You're going to just think you're doing it right. I mean, it's how it goes. Unless you have done CPR training in the last month, you probably aren't going to do it correctly. Jack tries to take over, and then Boone suggests doing a tracheotomy with a pen. And he's like, oh, I've seen someone do that before. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. You heard about this on TV. Boone. And like Jack gets this look on his face like, oh my God. And then he goes, you know what? That's a great idea. Go find a pen. And in that moment, we are seeing the fully realized view of who Boone is as a character. He wants to help. He has no idea what he's doing and he's going to mess it up. But you need to just send him off to the corner. Like, I'm sorry. Everybody loves Ian Somerhalder because apparently he has these piercing eyes that people are drawn to. They scare me. Because I don't know, they give me the heebie-jeebies a little bit, like his dark eyebrows with the piercing eyes that just look a little bit, I can't. Thankfully, Jack achieves CPR with Rose. She opens her eyes, and just as she takes a breath, a giant piece of the plane begins to wave in the air, and Jack looks over, and Hurley and Claire are underneath it. God. So now he's racing back down the beach and yelling at them to move out of the way. The three of them barely get out of the way before that piece of plane crashes to the ground and another giant explosion rocks the beach. Now, in real life, unfortunately, this explosion was super tiny, so they had to redo it and actually add way more things to make it way bigger, which is kind of funny because they just assumed that this piece would create this big moment, and that's not always true. Now, this has been nearly 10 full minutes of high impact action, high stress, and at this moment, Jack instructs Hurley to stay with Claire, and Hurley says, dude, I'm not going anywhere. It's a beautiful picture of who Hurley is as a person. I love that even with the teensiest bit of dialogue and action, we are realizing who each person is without even knowing how much we're learning about them. Our score fades, and all of the special effects noise completely quiet down. And Michael Giacchino takes us with this beautiful yet heartbreaking score into just Jack stumbling around the fuselage. He looks inside, and we're inside the plane looking out at him and the ocean. and there's like this hand hanging above his head, and that gives us a pretty good clue of what he's most likely looking in at. And I really love that we don't see it as the viewer, because first of all, this is primetime television. That's a little intense. And I think in some ways that makes it more impactful, because then we can create the image in our own mind. And instead of seeing random faces, we might see faces that we know, and it makes it more heartbreaking. And then Boone shows up with like 8 pens, and he's like, I didn't know which one was going to work best. And Jack's like, great, thanks. Like, oh my God. But we're getting that tiny little bit of humor to just kind of release the tension, like releasing a little bit of air from a very tight balloon. And then, of course, Boone looks in at the fuselage, and again, we see on his face what they are most likely seeing is just devastation. And like I said, there's a lot of people on this plane, and later it's revealed that only about 48 survived. That's such a small number. It really is. The music continues with no words and no more sounds from the wreckage, and Jack is just rifling through bags looking for a sewing kit, and he manages to find one, which I think is really surprising. I mean, I don't know, maybe people used to travel with them. I don't know anyone that does, but really helpful in this sense. And he goes farther down the beach to be alone, takes off his suit jacket, and we finally see a dramatic amount of red on his left rib cage. And so now we're looking back at everything that he just did, and he's very injured to the point where he went to look for a sewing kit to sew himself up somehow. Oh my God. The other really cool thing that was done on purpose is this the first amount of red that we see that is more than just the little scratches on his face. There's no red paint on the plane. We don't see any blood or gore throughout that entire action sequence. And this was done to make Jack's injury more impactful when he finally takes off his jacket, and we learn that the hero that is saving everyone else is not okay himself. And my God, if that is not even more characterization for Jack. A woman steps through the trees. It's Kate, one of our other main characters. Pretty big main character, by the way. She's looking lost and frightened, and she's like holding her hands close to her chest. I mean, she just looks gone. Jack calls out and asks her if she knows how to use a needle and thread, and she looks at him confused, like, what? I mean, yeah, a little out of context. He asked her if she knows how to sew up a pair of jeans, and she's like, and she shuts her eyes really hard and then shakes her head a little bit and goes, yeah, I sewed the drapes in my apartment. And he's like, that's great. Could you help me? And she steps down and asks him with what, and he raises up his arm, and she's like, and he says that he's a doctor, he would do it himself, but he can't reach right there, which makes sense. Also, I feel like he would be opening up the wound more if he moved too much. At first she refuses, and then he asks her to help again. He's like, please, I really need your help. And she's like, of course I will. And I just want to emphasize how incredible it is how with just a few lines of dialogue, we are showcasing an entire character. Wild. I mean, that's some incredible story writing, that just a few lines of dialogue are opening up a character, and we don't even know it because we're the viewer. If you're seeing this for the first time, you have no idea how much you're really learning by these few lines of dialogue. But Kate is a runner. Metaphorically, she ducks out in a panic when things just aren't going right. However, she's a really good person at heart, and she always steps in to help someone in great time of need, even if that kind of means that it's the cause of her undoing. Jack hands her the little alcohol bottle and says it's for her hand and to save him some for the wound. They joke about thread color, and he says standard black, and then he pours the alcohol over his wound, and I just, okay. We switch to Sawyer lighting a cigarette and gazing up at the wreckage. He hasn't spoken yet. We don't know his name. We're just getting used to all these new faces, one by one, coming into our view. He walks across what seems to be like a wing of the plane that's flat, and the setting sun is reflecting on the metal and the water. Gorgeous. Incredible shot. Incredible timing. Full body chills. Claire is standing in the surf looking down at her swollen belly, and she kind of touches it, and we just feel that possibility, but also the fear of like, am I going to have my baby on this island? Hope not. Hurley is organizing dinners from the plane, and we see Locke by himself looking out at the ocean as the sun continues to drop. And Boone is trying to make a phone call, but of course we hear like the dirt of the phone. And I'm sorry, but every time I see him doing this and knowing who he is later, I just imagine him being like, I have a very important business call to make. Like, I know he's trying to call for help, but I just can't help but picture that he's like, I'm a very important businessman. Like, I'm sorry. I try not to make fun of Boone, but like, it's low-hanging fruit. Saeed is gathering firewood and he's trying to create a big bonfire, and he meets Charlie in the process. And I just really like that we get these little moments where someone says, what's your name? And then they both answer each other. I really like that. Those are real life things that happen. And we don't see it, but we also in real life, let's admit that sometimes you have to ask someone their name a second or possibly third time. Not because you didn't like take them in as a person and really, connect with them, but names just kind of for some people. And then we see Rose, the woman that had CPR done on her by Jack, and she's crying and holding a ring up to her lips that's hanging from her necklace. And she kisses it, and I mean, again, so much story in the smallest, tiniest moment. That scene lasts for not even 3 whole seconds, and there's so much story there. We cut back to Kate and Jack. She's got her hair pulled back, and she says that she might throw up on him. And I have to say, I'm not great at medical stuff. Needles truly freak me out. I don't even have pierced ears, okay? Like, I just really hate needles. But I had to help my brother in a similar situation. There were no needles involved, but there was wounds and trying to like clean wounds and take care of him before we took him to urgent care. He's fine, by the way. It was just one of those things. And I have to say that something in you just kind of takes over in that moment. So even if just watching someone else do this, you would be like, absolutely not. No go for me. When you're taking care of someone else, especially someone that you really care about, I don't know. It's just the strangest thing that just takes over your body and your mind. And you just go into this place where you're like, I've got this. We're going to be okay together. She tells Jack that he doesn't seem afraid. And he tells her the story of his first solo surgery on this girl. It was in his first year of residency. And she was 16 years old. After 13 hours, oh my God, he accidentally rips open her dural sac, which sounds really gross, and it's the base of your spine where all the nerves come together, and all the nerves just start spilling out of her like angel hair pasta. Yeah, he says it like that, pasta. Sometimes Jack's voice, I can't. I know that he's great, and he's a hero, and we adore him for the things that he does, but sometimes, Jack... He says that the terror was so crazy, so real, but he knew that he had to deal with it. And so he made a choice. He let the fear in, let it take over, let it do its thing, but only for 5 seconds. And that's our opening quote for this episode, is that he literally counts it out slowly and then shuts it down and just starts moving forward. And what's really cool is we actually get a little glimpse of the actual actor's tattoo that has a 5 in the center. Not planned, just a beautiful coincidence or act of fate. Who can say? He says then the fear was gone. He sewed her up and she was fine. And Kate says she would have run for the door. And he's like, you're not running now. So much story. I can't. It's just amazing. This pilot, you guys. And then night falls on the island. And I have to say that there's something truly scary to think about how you've crash landed. There are people that have passed away. There are people that are badly injured. Maybe you're a little bit injured, or maybe you're totally fine. No one has come and darkness has fallen. And it's like, what now? You're just going to go to sleep and you wake up in the morning and you're still there. I just can't imagine that. Charlie and Saeed are sitting by the bonfire together, and Charlie has like what looks like medical soft like fabric tape wrapped around each of his fingers, and he's writing with a Sharpie the letters F-A-T-E, fate. And I literally had friends who did this exact same thing. Charlie was like an emo icon of the early 2000s, y'all. Like, if you weren't there, you couldn't possibly understand. He's also wearing a black hoodie, and he has the hood completely over his head, like he's hiding inside of it. It's such a brilliant character choice, and it was his thought to put the hood on that he kind of like goes into it in a hiding manner. We really see that throughout his plot lines, that when he really like starts to go internal with himself, he puts that hoodie on. And Saeed says to him, "You'd think they'd have come by now." And Charlie's like, "Who?" "Anyone." Now Shannon is giving herself a pedicure and refuses a chocolate bar from Boone. And I have to say, I firmly believe that Shannon is in a mindset that a lot of people would actually lock themselves into unknowingly and wouldn't be able to kind of break out of that. You go into a space of denial. This isn't happening. Everything is fine. They're going to come get us. The rescue boat is coming. Like, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to like settle in and like create a little nest for myself. No, I'm going to pretend like everything is normal. And you know what? A lot of people do that in disastrous situations. They really do. And she refuses any food and says that she'll eat on the rescue boat. And she's like fed up with Boone and the fact that he is like helping other people, because in her mind, this isn't real. Hurley checks on Claire and asks if any more baby stuff has happened. And she says, "No, I'm okay." And he tells her to hang in there, hands her a little pack of silverware. And just before he steps away, he hands her a second dinner. And I'm in love. It really warms you to his character. And I just want to take a quick pause right here. There is a kind of unspoken / unwritten rule in YA books, so young adult fiction, that the first, like let's say the main character is a straight female. The first male that she comes across that is not related to her is most likely the love interest. And so I feel like that's what we're setting up as we're walking along here, is that Jack and Kate are together. Hurley and Claire? No spoilers. That doesn't happen. But I think it should have. I really, really think it should have. I have way more thoughts on that, but we're not going to talk about that right now. Okay. We get a quiet moment between Michael and his son Walt, and he asks him if he's warm enough. And Walt hasn't said anything. He just slowly nods, and his eyes are wide open. I can't imagine being a kid in this scenario, and he's the only kid that we see on the beach. So we have to guess that he's the only one. Jin is talking to his wife, Sun, and we get subtitles here for their Korean language. The only reason why we get subtitles is that there is a rule of the show that if there are other Korean people in the scene and no English speakers, we get subtitles to be in on the dialogue. If there are English speakers present and they don't understand Korean, we don't get to understand. I kind of like that. It's such a unique choice on the part for especially American television, where any little strange or different type of dialogue is usually given subtitles. And here we get to be in on the secret, but later on, we don't always. It's really cool. Jin tells Sun not to leave his sight and that she must follow him wherever he goes and that they have to stay together. And we get this amazing close-up on Sun's face that is just lit up a little bit golden by the fire. And the depth of story on this woman's face is so intense. The way that her eyes barely move. She barely nods her head. And there's just so much behind that. What is their relationship? Like, does she want to stay with her husband all the time? Does she even want to be near him, even in this moment, when she is so terrified? A horrible thing has happened to her today. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? And yet she literally looks like, I want nothing more than to leave. Now, of course, everybody wants to leave the island. We all want to be rescued. This is very different. It feels to me like she would give anything to just go sit with Claire or Hurley. I don't even know. Now Jack is checking on a man with a large piece of shrapnel stuck in his side. And Kate asks if the guy's going to live. And he's like, "Why? Do you know him?" "Well, he was sitting next to me." Oh, just like the chance of like, you were there. You were, it's like that thing where the tornado goes by, takes the person's house next to you, and yours is totally fine. How? Why? Then Jack uses a palm leaf cut into the shape of a plane and waves it through the air and talks about what must have happened with the crash. He says they were at least 40,000 feet up, and they must have hit an air pocket, dropped maybe 200 feet, and that the turbulence started to rock them around. And then he says that he blacked out. And Kate reveals that she saw the entire thing and that the tail was gone, but she couldn't bring herself to look back. I get it. And then the front end of the plane broke off. Oh, man. And Jack says that neither are on the beach and that they need to find the cockpit so they can find the transceiver and send out a signal so that the rescue party can find them. And she's like, how would you know all of this? And he says that he took a couple flying lessons and it wasn't for him. Again, I feel like there's so much story there, but I don't feel like we get a whole lot of knowledge past that. It's just one of those little character things that makes them a more well-rounded person in our view, but we don't need to know that part of his story. Kate says that she saw smoke, and he gets this look on his face, and she's like, if you're going to the cockpit, I'm going with you. And finally he looks at her and says, I don't even know your name. And finally they say Kate and Jack to each other. So not only do we learn her name, but so does he. And then we hear it. The thing on the island, the sound is a mix of absolute terror, but also familiar sounds. Now, I looked it up. Lots of people have talked about this. And one of the sounds is so small, but very distinct. It's the sound of a register scanner at a grocery store, like the boop, boop. And then we've got what apparently is a taxi cab receipt being printed. So it's like that, like, and then there's a clickety clack of like old computer keys. And then something that sounds kind of like a really intense, like, ship horn, or maybe like an old train type horn, because it's not low, it's more of a higher pitch. And all of this together makes it sound so terrifying, but at the same time so familiar that you feel like you've heard it before. And I love that. It's almost like the mixture of like people's fears gathered in one sound. The button to end this scene, as a bunch of our main characters are lined up with the firelight glowing on their faces, is Charlie saying, terrific. And then we get a for commercial break. Brilliant. Just brilliant. We fade from white to the wing of a plane in the air. Incredible shot. Everybody gets it for like TikTok and YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff. I feel like this is kind of where it started, to be honest. We are now witnessing the moments with Jack before the crash. He's sitting in a window seat and a flight attendant interacts with him and ends up giving him a full bottle of alcohol. I fully admit I don't know what this is. I feel like it's either vodka or tequila. I feel like it's vodka because it looks like he was putting it into what was orange juice at one point, and he's just been adding more and more of this alcohol in there. Gross. And he tells her that it's not a very strong drink. And sorry, I'm gonna make fun of Jack's voice all the time. Just embrace it. And I don't drink a lot, but the fact that he already had a bottle that he pours into his cup and then puts a full bottle into his pocket seems like a lot. Also, he's a doctor. He doesn't need free bottles of alcohol. Or I guess you have to pay for that. I don't know if you have to pay for these things. You know what? We're going to move on. What's interesting to think about is how the flight attendant is one of those faces that we see on the plane. Are we going to see her on the beach or never again? Everybody around Jack on the plane is one of those faces that you're like, am I going to see this person again? Are they a character that I will remember, should remember? It's really interesting. I mean, it's a little morbid actually, but it's interesting all the same. This same flight attendant runs by chasing after Charlie, and Jack ends up sitting in the aisle seat right across from Rose. And we get a little bit of turbulence and the plane kind of shimmies a little bit. And that same attendant's voice is over the loudspeaker. How is she running after Charlie and making this announcement? Anyways, she also has an Australian accent, and she says that everyone needs to return to their seats and put on their seatbelts, which, scary. I know it's going to crash, but I'm just saying, in a plane, when I am on a plane and it is threatening to have turbulence and we all of a sudden have to put our seatbelts on, I'm trying not to panic. Jack sees that Rose is nervous and tells her that it's normal, and she says she knows that and that her husband always says that planes want to stay in the air. And he goes, well, he sounds like a very smart man. And I like just the nothing small talk that he's having with her to try to distract her from the fact that she's nervous. And she goes, okay, well, I'll make sure to tell him that when he comes back from the bathroom. And she's almost like frustrated, but also still scared. Like, why are you not here when I am scared right now? And then Jack is so sweet. He tells her that he's going to keep her company until her husband returns. Such a sweet character moment between these two. I really love it. Then he starts to say that it'll be over soon, and then boom. We are now going to plummet to the ground. A terrible alarm is sounding and the plane is doing like this weird like shriek sound with the engine, which I hate. And the oxygen masks come down from the sky. Whew, everything is trembling, and in the commentary, the directors mentioned that the plane itself on set was never moving. It was completely stable on the ground. But what they did instead is had the actors behave as though the entire plane was trembling, and they would lean back into their seats really hard and like close their eyes and then jostle their bodies around. And then even more than that, they even started having the camera itself shake in a chaotic manner. I mean, it's unbelievably cool. I love that such a simple way to like make the plane shake is to just have the camera itself shake. First of all, it's cheaper. And second of all, I feel like it's more effective than all these special effects things that we use in CGI nowadays. Just shake the camera, Blair Witch style. Why not? We dramatically cut to a beautiful ocean sparkling in the sunlight. My God. It's so incredible that we have used a setting like this, a tropical beach that's supposed to be relaxing and calming and something you dream about, and they've literally crash landed into a worse nightmare. Wow. Everyone is discussing the monster sound, and Jack is in the foreground with everyone blurred behind him. Kate comes up and insists that she's going on the hike to the cockpit because they've got to get that transceiver. He tells her that she needs better shoes, and music rises to the occasion. It's very like sorrowful and sad, and reminding us that not only is this a crash site where there are survivors, there are literally people who have passed on this beach and are still there, just amongst everybody who's trying to figure out what to do. Kate finds what looks like to be a child face down in the sand, and she's carefully removing their shoes, and I just can't even imagine what it would be like to try to find somebody who's your size and to think like this could have been me. And as she's taking off this child's shoes, she looks up and sees who we know is Locke, but to her is a complete stranger. And he starts to open his mouth and he has a huge orange slice inside. So it's that really weird, creepy, quirky smile thing. And it's so creepy. Like, who is this guy?
Who is this jackass?
And Kate's reaction is, of course, horror. She's removing the shoes of a deceased person that she is then going to put on and have as her own. And this guy is smiling like there's something to be happy about. And it just, oh my God. We keep getting glimpses of this guy, and we have no idea anything about him except that he is clearly someone to watch out for. Also, he has a scratch over his right eye, like Scar from The Lion King. So if that doesn't tell you we should be watching out for this guy, I don't know what else does. A small group of our characters have gathered in a circle, and they're discussing the monster sound, of course, because it's the terrifying thing in the jungle, and also sunblock and just normal things like that. And so it's Boone, Shannon, Michael, Walt, Hurley, Charlie, and Saeed. All of them together. All the people that we have been introduced to, we know their names and maybe a small snippet about who they are as a person. Hurley asks if there's something they should do about and he looks at Walt and goes, BODYS, and then Walt speaks up and goes, BODIES. He's not wrong. And Shannon immediately cuts it off and goes, no, they'll deal with it when they get here. Like, the rescue team. Shannon is such deep denial right now. Like, literally, she was the one who had sunblock, because of course she does. Like, she wants to tan. Jack drops in and says he's going to the cockpit to find the receiver. And then he tells Boone to keep an eye on the wounded and tells him about like the guy with the leg thing, the guy with the shrapnel and all this stuff. And Boone has this look on his face like he expected that he was going to be the hero of this show. Like, he's supposed to be the leader. He's supposed to be the hero. How dare this doctor show up and be the boss of everything? And we learn way later in the series that Boone is very used to being in charge of other people. So I'm sure that being a young guy on the beach who is being told what to do is very foreign to him and really uncomfortable, to be honest. Charlie announces that he's going on the hike because he doesn't feel like sitting around and he just can't handle it. And as they're walking up this beautiful green field, like up an incline, Kate asks Charlie if they've ever met before, and Charlie's like, no, but I've been waiting for you to ask. And she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, you know. And then he starts singing a song from his band, You All Everybody, You All Everybody. Because he's in the band Drive Shaft. He even holds up a ring that he's wearing on his hand from one of the tours that they did. And Kate is like, are you serious? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, oh my God, I used to love them. And he's like, used to? And she's like, yeah, my friend Beth is obsessed. And he goes, give me Beth's number, I'll call her. And Jack shuts it all down and he's like, guys, we're trying to find the transceiver here. We're kind of busy. And Kate's like, did you know that he was in Drive Shaft? And Jack's like, I don't care. He's all about business, you know? Jack doesn't know how to have fun. I don't think that he was ever taught. It's not his fault. Some people just aren't taught how to relax or have fun. As they walk, we get a side view of the three of them walking in a line, and we have Vincent, the dog, watching from the bushes. It feels very interesting how we keep cutting to little moments where Locke or a dog is watching other characters. And I feel like it's supposed to be some kind of symbol. Like, what? I don't know what it's supposed to mean, but for some reason, in my mind, Vincent very much feels like a symbol of a guardian angel type figure. I mean, if I had a guardian angel, it would probably be a dog. That makes sense to me, so maybe that's why I think that. He was there when Jack woke up from the crash site and just quickly ran off, and that basically incited Jack to get up and start moving. I don't know, I just feel like it means something. We cut back to the beach and see that there are dark clouds forming on the horizon. And in this shot, Locke is sitting on the sand by himself looking out at the clouds. And then suddenly, Charlie, Jack, and Kate are in a massive downpour. And Charlie is like, is this normal for the sky to become dark like the world is ending? I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to do Charlie's accent any type of justice. He is one of the coolest actor voices ever. And for some reason, it feels as if Locke has caused this storm. I don't know why, just him sitting on the beach looking out at the clouds almost feels like he called the storm to the island. Everyone on the beach is trying to seek shelter, hiding under plane wings, under pieces of equipment and stuff like that. Sun is cuddled up in a little ball and Jen is yelling at other people to get away from them. Oh my gosh. And then, of course, we hear the monster in the jungle again because just not enough is happening. Oh, so freaky. Our score gets more intense and suspenseful, almost foreboding, as Kate, Jack, and Charlie approach the nose of the plane. Now, in the commentary, it was revealed that the three actors were actually blindfolded as they approached the nose of the plane, so that when they saw it in real time on the camera, their reactions were genuine. The nose of the plane is sticking straight up, so the broken part is on the ground and the nose is all the way up in the treetops. Super dramatic, and also now they have to climb up the aisle of the plane holding onto seats that are both empty and not so empty. Oh, to get all the way up to the cockpit, and the door is shut at the top, of course. Why would it be open? And Jack has to open it, and when he does, a body just flies through the opening and flings all the way to the ground. Jump scare. Our color tone has also changed from that green, beautiful jungle of what almost feels like a tropical paradise to dark, hazy blue with deep shadows inside the plane itself, because not a whole lot of light is actually reaching this plane. First of all, most of the windows are covered by trees and greenery, but even so, it's crazy downpour outside. There's not a whole lot of light. This effect was actually used with a filter that they used to use on horror and action films that were set in a darker tone emotionally, and we just don't use it anymore. And I would just like to say that I think it's insane that we have basically turned off the lights in a movie scene and just expect people to be able to see what's going on outside of a movie theater. Because once upon a time, we used to just put a literal blue plastic filter or a blue or gray toned glass in front of the camera and allowed that to be the color tone instead of literally just turning lights off. It's so frustrating to me, because nowadays, if this show was made today, we wouldn't be able to see anything inside that plane. We would miss out on so many details. We would miss out on character expressions. You miss so much when you turn out the lights, you know? The incline was also achieved by just tilting the camera Genius. We don't have to prop it up or try to use like big cranes or anything. It's just with that camera. Genius. After that body flies through the cockpit door, Jack asks Kate if she's okay, and she's like, yeah, are you okay? And Charlie's like, Charlie's fine, by the way. Why am I Charlie in this scenario? Oh my God. Jack and Kate climb into the cockpit, and Jack says that they're looking for a complicated walkie-talkie. That's the transceiver. The windows of the plane are actually kind of like steamed over because it's very humid where they are. And all the green leaves from the trees are kind of covering the glass anyways. So again, it's a little brighter in this area, but it's still pretty terrifying. A gasp from the pilot scares them both as he finally awakens, breathing hard. And this guy is actually played by one of the director's good friends. And this good friend gets to play a part in almost all of his work, which is pretty cool. I love that. Jack claims the pilot has a concussion, and we learn it's been 16 hours since the crash. Wow. And then we finally get the story of the crash itself. The pilot says that 6 hours in, the radio went silent, and they turned back to try to land in Fiji, but unfortunately, by the time they hit turbulence, they were 1,000 miles off course. And then we get the greatest line that is so good for trailers, good for commercials, good for previously on Lost. They're looking for us in the wrong place. The loss of hope is visible in Kate. Her muscles just go slack as she realizes that they may not get rescued. Even if this transceiver works, the people who are looking for them have no idea where to look. Then the pilot grabs the transceiver and tries to turn it on. It's not working. Meanwhile, Jack is like, where is Charlie? Because he hasn't been here this entire time. Where did he go? Kate finds him in the bathroom, and just as she's about to ask him what he was doing, the monster is back. Because of course it is. It was on the beach, and now it found them in the forest, and I can't. Kate jumps into Jack's arms and is leaning into his chest. Hi, are we a couple now? Like, what's going on? But the fact that they are completely bonded together already, I kind of love it. And she says, it's right outside. And of course, the pilot has no idea what's going on. He's like, what's outside? What's going on? I just woke up. A shadow moves across the plane windows as Jack tries to wipe away the steam of the creature. And I just want to say that this reminds me of a VHS tape that I had when I was little. It was called, literally, the title was More Dinosaurs. And it was two guys talking about dinosaurs and everything. And at the end of the movie, just before the credits, one of them accidentally brings a T-Rex home, and so you can see the silhouette of the T-Rex walking past their windows as they're trying to like hide from it inside the apartment. And so they'll like sneak across the floor, and the T-Rex's silhouette just tiptoes after them. As much as I deeply love dinosaurs, yeah, I even have dinosaurs on my t-shirt right now. I'm not kidding. I still get really scared of the idea of a T-Rex finding me. Like, at least once a month I have a T-Rex nightmare, even though I absolutely love them. They still scare me. You know what? You can be fearful and respectful and feel love all at the same time. The pilot gets up and climbs to the highest point of the nose of the plane, to the windows, and we get a really clear view of him setting the transceiver down on one of the seats behind him. And then the monster yanks him through the window and blood splatters everywhere. As the three of them are trying to escape, Jack actually goes back for the transceiver, and the three of them are now running from the site, and the camera again is shaking along as it's running beside them. Genius move. Apparently they were actually running in place with the camera shaking, which is kind of hilarious, but it was the only way to get a good clear view while still having a chaotic effect. Charlie falls in the mud and Jack runs back for him, and both of them nearly die, and Kate is still running. She manages to hide in a thick tangle of vines and tree trunks and realizes that she's completely alone right now, and she screams out for Jack, only Jack. And we hear like this like thud that sound very similar to T-Rex footsteps. And then thunder crashes around her, and it sounds like the thunder is literally on top of her right now. She remembers Jack's story and starts counting out loud 1 to 5. And her eyes are scrunching up super tight because she is truly terrified and allowing that terror to take over her body for 5 whole seconds. She then steps back out into the rain and screams because Charlie is suddenly there, and they both fall to the ground, she on top of him, and it's still raining so incredibly hard that they have to shout to hear one another. And Charlie says that he and Jack got separated and they argue a little bit, and then suddenly the rain just shuts off like a faucet. That's normal, sure. Kate says they have to go back, and Charlie's like, back? Kate, there's a certain gargantuan quality about this thing. Sorry, it sounds awful. That is not Charlie's voice. But Kate says she is not leaving Jack, and the two silently walk through the soaked jungle, and Charlie actually takes his hood off as they walk, which I take as a good sign that he is present and in the moment, not hiding from it. And the green of the jungle is so sharp, it's almost too much for this dark, terrifying moment. Charlie says that he heard Kate shout Jack, and he goes, I'm Charlie, by the way. Again, why am I always Charlie in this situation? Kate sees something in the mud and kneels down to find the pilot's wing pin, you know, that little like set of wings that all pilots wear. And there's a massive puddle around it, and it reveals the reflection of trees above, just bare branches and a body amongst them. Charlie and Kate stand, and just as Charlie is about to ask, we hear Jack's voice say, it's the pilot. Okay, Jack's okay. And Kate looks like her husband just came back from war. Oh my God. She asks if he saw the creature, and he says no, that he ducked into the bushes. And Charlie asks, guys, how does something like that happen? And then we get this really cool above view, above the branches, looking down at these bare branches with the pilot brutally destroyed, just laying across them with his arms and legs hanging down. And boom, that's the end of Pilot Part 1. Ooh, that's literally the end of the pilot, the guy that flies the plane, and Part 1 of the pilot of the show. Super tragic. So originally in the story, the way that it was written, the body in the branches was supposed to be Jack, and Kate was supposed to be our main character of the show. Now, she still is, of course, one of the main characters, but Jack becomes our leader, and I'm really glad that he did. I just don't think the show would be the same without the dynamic between Jack and Kate. And I think we really see that play out as the two of them basically trauma bond through this entire Part 1, including the fact that Charlie sees how much the two of them are bonding and feels left out. I mean, I know that some people would say that's kind of silly, like this, they don't know each other, but the way that Kate and Jack have truly like melded together as one person, making decisions together, following one another, not leaving the other behind, protecting one another. I think it happens 1 in a million because maybe they're soulmates. Just saying. I sincerely hope that you have enjoyed Part 1 of The Lost Pilot. Our next episode will be Part 2 of the pilot, and I cannot believe that these two parts were aired separately, but I can see why that would have happened in early 2000s. We didn't always get the ability to have a longer pilot episode, especially when it was just like a normal TV show. Nowadays, reality TV can sometimes get up to 90-minute slot, but it's just not expected, at least not on American television. So I sincerely hope you will join me for our next episode, Part 2 of The Lost Pilot, because it is killer. I mean, it's completely iconic. The two halves are made to be one. If you have any comments, questions, requests, anything at all, you can find me at Instagram at Let's Rewatch It Again. We also have a YouTube channel, Let's Rewatch It Again podcast, where you can actually view this episode as I am talking about it. Well, not the Lost episode itself. You can view the podcast episode. I am talking directly into the camera as best I can. I'm not great at eye contact, but I do what I can. You can also send any of your thoughts to our email address at letsrewatchitagain@gmail.com. And please follow, subscribe, like, rate, review, all the things wherever you are listening, wherever you are watching. And I'll catch you on the flippity flip.